3 faculty who have agreed to share today to talk about ways that they're planning on using collaboration techniques in their classrooms this fall. We really want this to be a chance for you to hear from other faculty and get some ideas for what they are doing, so you can hopefully take some of these ideas on your own if you would like. So today we'll have Dr. Julie Licata talking first, and then Dr. Andrew Bottomley second, and finally Dr. Sarah Portway will be third. And so most of the time we for them. At the end we will have a time for some questions and answers if you would like to ask any questions. And with that I will turn, I keep wanting to say I turn the floor over to, but I don't know what to really say in this current environment. Turn the stage, turn the screen.
I'll take the stage.
Stage, okay, all right. So I'll turn the stage over to Julie, who is our first presenter. So Julie, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is something that is actually a semester-long collaboration working towards a final group presentation at the end of the semester. And the reason why I wanted to create this sustained activity is because what in the Blackboard level 2 training, one of the big things was like making sure that students are interacting with each other throughout the course of the semester. So my initial plans are, in the first week of the semester, I have the students doing 2 things that are going to give me some context about who they are. And I'm teaching Music Cultures of the World is the course I'm sharing with you. So everybody in the class is there because they have some interest in music. So in the first week, the 2 things they're going to do, one is that they're going to post an introduction of themselves where they actually start telling me about what music is in their life and some of their interests in different styles of music. So they're going to tell me some music that they listen to, and this is all going to be shared through a discussion board. And then the second thing in the first week that's going to inform me about the students is a journal submission where they tell me why they're taking the class, what are their strengths and weaknesses in learning and in group work, and just in general their feelings about, you know, taking courses online and anything that they think is going to be a challenge for them this semester. So what I'm hoping is that that information will give me enough to make decisions about splitting my class into 4 different groups. So the class is currently 25, it's capped at 25, so I'm going to have 4 groups within that. And those 4 groups throughout the semester, they're going to have scaffolded assignments in each module that lead them towards the final product of their final presentation to the class. In addition, the way that I'm scheduling my synchronous meeting times is that every other week or every Thursday is going to be, I'm going to meet with group 1 and 2, each for 30 minutes apiece on one Thursday. Then the following week, I'll meet with group 3 and 4. So I will be meeting with each group for 30 minutes individually every other week throughout the entire semester, starting from the 2nd week of classes. So all that's the structure that's going to set me up to communicate with them and have them in one space together to communicate with each other about what they're working on for their final projects. I'll also have a day during the second meeting day during the week, which will just be open for like virtual office hours and anybody coming with questions. So, and then anticipating that group work is always hard and there's always issues that kind of come up. I'm also posting or making available in every module the journal tool for students to communicate to me personally without their other group members, to talk about like how things are going in their group work, if they need to if I need to address some kind of issues that are happening in the group dynamic, among other things that they can talk about. So I will share my screen with you right now and walk you through the 4 modules that precede the final project, and then the 3 assignments that happen in the final 3 weeks of class where they're only working on their final project. Yeah, share the screen, do that. Okay. Okay, so you're seeing my the Start Here page of my Music Cultures of the World course, right?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so many things still to be done in this class, but I'm going to start in Module 1 And just scroll down to the bottom, I have objectives and tasks for the week, and then I have each week of the module in a separate folder. And group work for the final project happens in the last week of every module. So, oh, sorry, I made fake groups for right now. So right now the first part of this is a discussion board in which the students will just start introducing themselves a little bit more in depth, sharing their musical experiences, their musical interests, and maybe specific music cultures that they might be interested in talking about that might have led them to taking the course. And then the big thing that they're actually going to submit to me is basically a summary of what their rules of engagement are. So it's kind of like a group contract, but it seems a little bit less formal, where they will decide how they're going to communicate with each other, talk to each other about their strengths and weaknesses, and talk about how they're going to deal with the fact that not everybody is going to be able to give 100% all the time, and how they plan to deal with that. And then also what my role in the group would be. So that's the first module, and that's in the week of September 7th. So they will have had a couple of meetings with me already at this point and have interacted in other forums in the groups dealing with the content of the module. So in module 2, the last week of that, the group forum for final project is again a discussion board where the students will be, their main task is to come to an agreement about the topic their group is going to research for their final project. And for their topics, they're going to go back and forth in Blackboard on the discussion board so that I can actually interact with them and kind of lead them or guide them or answer questions if they have them as they go. But the things that they need to consider are specific geographic regions or styles of music that they want to study, and secondly, like a socio-cultural perspective or parameters that they're going to be dealing with in the specifics of that culture, because it's not just like giving me the history of the music in this particular area. They're going to start to talk about who their audience will be for their presentation and what tools they'll use to present, and then present their final post of the week will be very specific, concise summary of what they're planning on doing. And that's again in a discussion board. And then in module 3, the last week of the class, or the last week of the module, now this is the week where they start actually finding resources, and they're all required to contribute to resources. And this is again a discussion board where they're going to maybe on their own be finding resources and then posting them here. I've listed places they should be looking for, or what kinds of things they should be looking for in terms of resources for this project. And that their posts, when they do post a resource, should include a link or a copy of the resource, an MLA citation, and a 200 to 250 word summary, including the reason why you think the source is relevant to the topic. And then also, I'm trying to guide them through like the whole process of doing research. And so I wanted to acknowledge to them that at this point, they may also want to revise their topic or the parameters, the specific parameters of the questions that they're asking, because we know that sometimes the sources you find lead you in different directions than you originally planned to go. So, so that's module 3. And then module 4, their group assignment is to start designing the outline for their presentation. So what are they actually going to be presenting, and maybe even how they're going to present. And I'm trying to, and this now is not a discussion board. So they will have, hopefully by this point in the class, they have figured out how they communicate, how they collaborate best outside of class, whether they actually schedule a Zoom meeting or do it via GroupMe or whatever kind of tools they want to use, which they would have identified in the first week. But they'll begin outlining and turn into, at the end of the week, a broad draft outline of the presentation, and then a revised topic if necessary. So that leads us then to the final module, which is the last 3 weeks of class, in which this is the time where we're going to all be virtually off campus anyway. So I'm not giving them any other assignments other than to continue working on their group projects. So the 3 big assignments for the final module is an assignment, not a discussion board, but it's an assignment in which the students will present, turn in a revised outline of the presentation that includes like identifying where the materials are coming from that they're going to present, and a draft plan of who will be doing the work, and then again a revised topic if applicable. The next week, a week of 11:30, they're going to continue discussing the big questions, discuss the tools, discuss who will be doing what and when in terms of creating the presentation, and also in terms of actually who's going to be on the video, who's going to be doing the talking. And then this is what they're turning in via an assignment. And then finally, this is the last piece for the last two, during final exam week and also the last couple of days of class, I think. They'll be posting their presentation on a discussion board. And then here's a place where the whole class is going to come together to collaborate. So they're posting their video by Tuesday, December 8th. By Saturday of that same week, and this is a discussion board now, by Saturday of that same week, all students in the class will be required to post one prompting question to 2 other groups. So there's only going to be 4 presentations. They have to watch all 3 other groups and post one prompting question to those other 2 groups. And then I will also be engaging in those, watching the videos and posting questions myself. And then by Tuesday of the following week, which is the last day of finals, the students in the groups will have to respond to those questions that I posted and the questions that their peers posted. So it feels, looking at it like this, it feels like complicated. I'm hoping that it's not so complicated, just that because it's one big thing that they're doing little pieces of every week. So that's what I've got to share.
Thanks, Julie.
Yep.
So a couple questions. So you said for their final presentations, they're going to create a video and then post those in. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. They're going to post the link to it.
So they will figure out how to get together as their group, create their video, and then post it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah. So any questions for Julie?
I have a follow-up question to that. I want to do that same thing. Ed's flexing in the chat. I want to do the same thing where I have them posted to a discussion board and have people respond. Great idea. Do you have a rubric for that yet? And if you don't, I don't want to stress you out.
I don't have one specifically designed for any of these assignments yet, but I have some things that I will hopefully get to before next week.
Cool. Awesome. Well,
but I can share. I'll certainly share.
Yeah. That would be
that's
so cool.
That's one more thing on the list of 700 things that need to get done before Tuesday or Monday.
I didn't mean to pile on.
No, it was already there. It's cool.
One thing I just want to point out that I really like is your organization, Julie. Like you have your modules, and then inside of each module you have folders for the weeks. Mm-hmm. So I really like that idea of multiple things and your consistency with you're having your discussions every 3rd week. And then, as you said earlier, you're meeting every other week with those groups as mm-hmm. well to kind of give that scaffolding is the word I use for that, right? So this mm-hmm. we slowly build up around this to give them all the support structures they need, so that by the time they get to the end, it shouldn't be as cumbersome,
right? Yeah,
because they've got a lot of the work done along the way.
Yeah, we hope.
Yeah, we set up the structures, and then the work. Then they still have to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. So thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for being willing to open up your classes and share some of what's going on in there. That's mm-hmm. can be intimidating sometimes, so we really appreciate it.
Well, I will say that having to be here and do this, and you didn't make me be here, but I finished the details on all of that about an hour ago because I was supposed to do it last week and didn't get to it, so this was a good incentive to get it done. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Julie. Next we have Andrew, and Andrew's going to be presenting on some of the things he's going to be doing in his class as well. So Andrew, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I want to talk about. So I'm in communication media. I teach media studies courses. So I want to talk about an activity that I do in my new media practices course, which studies like internet and digital media culture, kind of critical analysis. And so this is particularly a jigsaw, which I'm guessing some folks have used in face-to-face classes, that they do on a class early in the semester when they're learning a number of different theories of social media. And I use it through, so this is through Microsoft Teams, so it's actually kind of convenient to be here in Teams doing this. So I'll start sharing my screen here if it works. Have you got me? Is that?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, because I just I somehow now have two versions of Teams because you coaxed me into downloading the new one, but it's like weird.
Yeah, the window pops up separate from the Teams area now.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, now like I hope that doesn't trip me up. But so this is a kind of a preamble. You can see I created a fake class called Fake Class. Just so there's no sort of student work in here, but as a sort of preamble to this activity that I'll walk through in a couple minutes, I'll point out that in classes like this one, I don't do this in all my classes, but I do it in a class like this. When I'm teaching online or doing a lot of online activity, I'll assign every student to what I call a home team at the beginning of the semester, and that's then a group of students that they work together with throughout the semester. So for me, 4 to 5 students is kind of the ideal size for one of these home teams. New media practices, I usually have around like 25 to 30 students. So right here, you'll see I have set up 5 home teams and 5 students in each. So this would be for like a class of 25. There's always a little bit of fun math you have to do at the beginning of the semester to get that balance right. But these home teams can actually serve a variety of purposes, which is why I like to have them. For kind of everyday class activities, it means that the students have already got a small group that they can work with. So if you're teaching online and you're doing a synchronous session and I have like a impromptu discussion question, I can just sort of throw the question out and ask the students to go join their home team, and they automatically have 4 or 5 other students that they can pair together with and just have a quick sort of discussion on the side. But it also allows to easily do things like team tests if I choose to do that in a class. And more generally, just give students a group of peers that they can kind of constantly check in with throughout the semester if they have questions about class material, or if they miss something, or if they want to share lecture notes, or if they want to study together for quizzes and tests and things. They just have like a kind of set group of students that they obviously, because they're working with constantly, they'll often build good bonds together with throughout the semester, and they can kind of rely on. But if you're unfamiliar with Microsoft Teams, this relies on a distinction between what Microsoft calls teams and channels. So then that language can get a little confusing. But basically, the team is the entire class. So I'm here, and when it says general, right, that's the entire class team. And the default on that is that it's public, so it's open to all the students in the course. And so, in my example here, right, fake class, that's the team, and that's the sort of main homepage. But within that larger team, you can create here, like you can go just here and you can add a channel, and you get this kind of menu on the left here, these different sort of subgroups or sub-teams, or what Microsoft calls channels. And I mean, you can make channels public. In fact, these first 5 are, and I'll get to that in a minute when I start describing the activity. But these ones that say home team, and you can actually see that little lock there, these are private. So these are just, you can see I was playing around in here before, but these are the individual home teams that are just for the students the select number of students who are in that group. So the 5 students would be the only ones who have the access to it. And again, that little lock there that you see next to some of the channel names shows that it's private, that they're only accessible to those students. And what I like about that is that it means that one thing is that if you're seeing my screen, of course, but if you were a student in this class, you would only see the home team that you're a member of, which also helps avoid any kind of confusion about like accidentally joining the wrong the wrong group on teams, that they'll only see this one, so they'll know when I say go to your home team, that's the one that they would go to or whatever. And the nice thing I like about this, though, is that once I've set up these home and away teams at the start of the semester, that's it, right? I don't need to change them for the rest of the semester. So it's not really as confusing as it might kind of initially appear, and it saves a lot of work in the long run. So whenever I have a new activity, I just need to like load the different prompts into, so I'll have to load maybe like a prompt like this, or what you saw on the general page, which I'll get back to in a second, into Teams. But apart from that, you know, the students kind of know where to go and know what to do after we've done this a couple times. And so kind of shifting back here to the actual exercise I want to walk through quickly, this sort of is this jigsaw, this social media jigsaw, is designed to meet one of the class's main learning outcomes, which is to teach them to define kind of key terms and concepts related to the internet and digital culture, and then deploy them in classroom discussions. So that they're going to be, essentially the end goal here is that the students are going to take a deep dive into one concept, and they're going to bring that back to their home team and so teach it to their peers. The activity, so again, it's a jigsaw, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with in a face-to-face classroom environment. But for those who maybe aren't, a jigsaw breaks the class into groups and then breaks the assignment into pieces that the students will kind of reassemble to complete a puzzle. So this particular jigsaw is covering these sort of key theoretical concepts introduced in the weeks. They have an assigned textbook reading from a book called Digital Media and Society that I use. They've read a chapter, which is it's only about a 15-page chapter. But what they're going to do is they're going to I've assembled here. You see 5 key concepts from the chapter, and they're going to each get assigned one of those concepts, and like I said, do kind of a deep dive, and then and kind of go through a few different stages. Which if I pull this up here, that's not one. You can kind of see the steps that I'll walk through here in a second. This is the instructions that I give to the students, and the students will do this all synchronously in a single Monday, Wednesday, Friday 50-minute class period that we would do through Teams. So a little bit the specifics of what's happening here, the mechanics of it. In Microsoft Teams, I already have set up the class team, the main fake class team for the entire class, and then the separate channels for the home team. So they would already have that. And so the class of 30 students is then kind of subdivided into 5 groups of 5, or rather the class of 25 is divided into 5 classes of 5. And so again, that might seem like kind of confusing if you're just looking at this for the first time, but that gets set up in like the first week of class. So once they've done this a couple times, it's very logical and they get used to it. They get it pretty quick. So the only thing that's really going to be different anytime I do an activity like this is going to be the membership of who's in the away teams, which are these kind of breakout teams. Those will change, but the home teams will always remain the same. So I'll start the activity here. I'll at the beginning of class, when the students are all logged on, I'll do a quick orientation here in the general class, the class team channel. And I'll do, I'll just do a video meeting, right? So you just like, oops, I probably shouldn't do that. How do I get out here?
That's a good question. I've never had to. I'm
gonna.
Yeah. So Andrew jumped off for just a second. I think. Oh, he's on hold in our meeting, and he'll be right back. I think he had to go to the other team for just a second. So hopefully he will get back. While we're waiting for Andrew to get back, Lisa posted interesting question about teams and doing different ones, and I think that's really up to you. Do you want to have them be in specific teams, or do you want to have them move them around halfway through the semester? And I don't think there's a better or worse way there. I think there's justifications for both, and your justification is really nice.
All right.
Sorry, Andrew, I was answering a question while you were gone, so
That's
glad you're back
fine.
again.
This new Teams thing is messing me up. So sorry about that. I really I had this all down earlier. So let me see. Am I back to?
And you're not sharing your screen. There you go. Perfect. All right. Thanks.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, I should not have opened that because it gets when I'm sharing like this. But I'll pop in. So throughout the course of the 50-minute class, by the way, there'll be points where I'm live with the students via video, and I'll click the meetings and they'll join. And then other times where I'm going to send them away to do other things. So I'm kind of signing on and off, and it's structured in a way that I'll kind of explain quickly. But the idea here is that I'll give them a quick orientation, explain kind of what they have to do over the next 45 minutes or so. So that after I do that orientation, the students will hang up, and the first thing they'll do is they actually go work on their own. The idea here is that the 5 concepts or keywords, there's 5 keywords, there's 5 teams, home teams, and there's 5 away teams. And so I'll give each member of the home team a different keyword to explore. And there is this post here. I'm actually not this post, because that just has the assignments here. This post here is waiting for them, explaining the steps, and then this other post is waiting for them with the team assignments. So they just find their name and then they figure out which away team they're in. But actually, before I put them in either the away team or the home team, they're just going to spend like 10 minutes working solo. And the first task that they have is that they have to, once they get that keyword, is that they need to come up with a clear explanation of the keyword on their own. And so I encourage them to consult their textbook and their notes, and they're free to use the internet. But ultimately what they need to come up with in the span of 10 minutes is a 1 to 2 sentence definition, ideally in their own words. So, I'll encourage them to paraphrase and not just take from the book verbatim. And they also need to come up with a real world example that helps illustrate that concept. So ideally something that they just know from their own experience. But I'm dealing with a class on internet culture here. So I have the luxury of the fact that they all have lots of examples to pull from in their own lives. But the idea, of course, here is making them really think critically about what is the concept and then what pairs with it. And then they'll be asked to elaborate on that. So like, for instance, if the concept's platform, they need to pick a social media platform that they think clearly illustrates the definition from the book. And that's actually a lot harder than it seems, because in the book, it gives them basically a checklist of the framework of participation that defines a platform. So they need to think about, well, what, does Snapchat meet all of these criteria? Does Twitter meet all these criteria, right? So after they do that initial 10-minute solo prep time in step 1, the students will disperse into the breakout group or the breakout channel. So that'd be like the away team. So then I'll ask them to go, I'll say, I'll interrupt them and I'll say, via a message on the conversation, and maybe I'll pop up on video for them, but I'll say, go join with your away team. So this is, where these are the other students in the class, not from their home teams, from other teams that have been assigned the same concept. So essentially, these are like the expert groups. So by doing this, they're going to get together with the other members who are exploring that same term as them. And what they're asked to do for another 10 minutes or so is they'll be asked to compare their definitions and try to come up with what they think is the most effective definition for their term, again, in a single sentence or 2 sentences. So hopefully there's a little bit of kind of explaining, oh, this is what I thought was the best explanation. No, I thought this was the best. But hopefully they come up with that term pretty quickly. And then they really will quickly compare their examples and just pick one of those examples. And then they'll spend the rest of the time, the last 4 or 5 minutes or whatever, doing a little quick online searching to research their examples. So like with the platform one, maybe they decided Twitter was a great example of a platform, and they'll go off, either together or individually, and look at Twitter a little bit and kind of analyze it quickly. This is all kind of done very, very on the fly. It's not, but it's designed to be that in the away teams here, like they could pop into video. and do a video meeting. They could just talk through the chat, whatever they're most comfortable with, whatever they feel, different groups will do it differently, but they're encouraged to, of course, be very active with one another. And then lastly, the last stage is that when they're done there, I'll kind of again break in and say, okay, go meet with your home team. So after 10 minutes with the breakout teams, they'll finally return back to that home team, and they just find it quickly there. And again, this one I'll definitely encourage them to get on video with one another, and they'll present their findings essentially. So each of the students will teach their idea to the other 4 members of their group. So they'll, excuse me, they'll share the definition, and then they'll walk through the example, helping to kind of make sure that everyone explains the concept. And they'll do this kind of round robin style. So each member will present to the rest of the group for like 2 to 3 minutes. So it'll take, about 15 minutes for everyone to present. So, again, it's like a few minutes of setup, 10 minutes in step 1, 10 minutes in step 2, 15 minutes in step 3, and that's a class period right there. That's 45 to 50 minutes or so. And so throughout the various stages of the activity, I'll jump in and out of the different team channels to monitor their progress. So I can kind of poke my head in. If they're on video, I can join their video, or I can just post a quick note in their conversation thread to just be like, how you guys doing? And I can just like I would in a classroom, right? If you're doing this in classroom, the students would be in separate groups, and I wouldn't be, I'm not omniscient, right? I can't be in one place at one time, but I'll try to jump in and out of each group and spend at least a couple minutes equally with each group. And I'll definitely, I'll try to keep my eye out for those that, there's those groups that are more self-sufficient, but I'll try to keep my eye out for those who maybe need a little more help and spend my time with them. But ultimately, the idea here is that I also will ask them to record that step 3 when they come back to the home team. So there'll be a video too that I can always refer back to, and that's where they were doing the little mini presentation to their group. And the key thing I'm really looking there for ultimately when it comes to like how I assess this, it's part of a larger what I call class engagement in my class, which is just essentially what other people might call participation. But I do have, when I'm doing it online, I'll have a rubric and I'll have a handful of activities every week. Sometimes they're just sort of quick writes, sometimes they're polls, other times they're things like this, where it's mainly completion work. They're kind of just getting graded on a rubric of check, check plus, check minus, so sort of satisfactory, unsatisfactory, or exemplary. And the main thing that, the main problem would be that somebody either wasn't present or, sorry, didn't, contribute their part, but most of them do, and so the really, I'm just looking to make sure that they, were thoughtful and that they, that they shared their ideas and they contributed to the group. And so this is, one of these types of activities that I'll do, this is probably on the more involved side. Sometimes I'll do collaboration activities like this where, like I said earlier, I might just throw a discussion question out and send them to their home team, and they'll talk for 5 or 10 minutes, and I might poke into each of the home teams while they're doing so. But this one is a much more scaffolded or structured activity that really invites them to at least become the expert in that one concept and teach it to the rest of the group, the rest of the home team, but they'll also learn from the other students in their home team. So essentially what happens over the whole thing when you disassemble it and reassemble it is they're going to get at least a review, a quick review of each of the key concepts in the chapter, and translated in a way that makes it not just a sort of textbook definition, but one that kind of through the examples ideally is kind of sprung to life for them. And that makes it a more sort of tangible lesson that they'll be able to, return to when they're studying for quizzes and tests and things. So that's kind of my online version of a jigsaw.
Thanks, Andrew. So a couple things first. Andrew has been using a lot of the Office 365 stuff for multiple years now, right? Mm-hmm. And so his much more down the rabbit hole than many people in this, which is a good thing because he can show us some of the great things that he's doing in his class because of that. So thank you. We are holding a training next Tuesday at 1 o'clock that's going to be going over kind of the how-to of a lot of what Andrew just talked about, actually. We purposely waited till next week because by the end of this week, you should be getting your teams created for your fall classes. So if it's something you're interested in using, you would have those available to you at that point. But that's why we've held off on doing that training, is we want you to have your own teams to look at for that. So just want to say it out loud before we move on. Yeah, Lisa, go ahead.
I think, I don't have my day timer in front of me because I'm out by the lake, but I think that I wanted to do that training next week, but I think new faculty, we have orientation, I think, because I remember seeing on my calendar, maybe I can look now.
And I think there is an orientation, but again, we're going to record all of these. So if you can't be there in person, the links will be available to you.
Okay, that's right. That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, because we understand people have their schedules are all over the place, and so we'll make sure to record every single one of those so you can get back to it afterwards. Andrew, for you real quick, what I liked your idea of, so your home groups are going to be the same throughout the whole semester, but every time you do an activity, their away group might be different. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's the idea, is that so they'll spend, the majority of the semester working with a core group of students, but they are constantly being rotated through. So anytime I do the away teams, I'll try to rotate them.
Yeah.
So and make it. I mean, I'll try to do it pretty randomly, but I do try to keep track of who they've been paired with before, so that by the end of the semester they've had direct interactions with everyone in the class.
Right.
That's the ideal.
Perfect. Thanks. Any questions for Andrew right now?
I had a quick question that might have, I'm sure it was answered many times ago, but you're doing this on Teams because it can only be done on Teams and not on Blackboard? Or like, why would you do this on Teams and not on Blackboard?
No,
and
sorry.
you, this is Rachel, and this is awesome.
Yeah, no. I think I meant to mention that, and I might not have. I mean, I'm doing this in Teams, but you very easily could do it in Blackboard Collaborate. I'm not as familiar with Blackboard Collaborate just because I've kind of, like Chilton said, I've actually been using Teams and Yammer and other Office 365 products for a while now. So it sort of just becomes, you work with what you know. But I know you can do breakout groups in Collaborate, so there's no reason why you couldn't do something similar there. I do like Teams for things like this, because of how, Teams is essentially Microsoft's rip-off of Slack, right? So it's meant to be a collaborative work platform. So it's really designed for people who are working in companies who would be working on group projects together, like working on an advertising campaign or something like that. So I've actually first started using Teams because I teach media classes, right? So I have students who are working on like media projects, like say they're doing a podcast over many, many weeks, or basically over the whole semester. And they have to be exchanging lots of files, audio files, scripts, so like text files and things. And Teams, in my experience, more so than Blackboard, works really well because you have all the files areas and things, and that it gives the students kind of a permanent place where once I put them into like the home teams rather, those home teams is a private little space where they can be constantly dialoguing with the group members, and they can share files, they could share audio and video if that's what they're doing. Julie, if they were doing music, they could share music files or whatever. So it's not that you could do that in Blackboard, but I've always found Blackboard to be a little more like student to instructor. And the thing I like about Teams is it works really well for student to student as well as student to instructor, because as the instructor, I can have groups working in all these different teams and working really independently, but I can kind of spy on them, and I can jump in to any one of their groups and check on their progress. Again, just really the flow. I like the flow of it, and I like the sort of versatility of it. Again, you could do it through something like Collaborate, but I think Blackboard, you then end up having to shift a lot of that work over to like, okay, go to the discussion board now, go here or there, and those things aren't as integrated through Blackboard. Whereas like Teams, it's all kind of very nicely under one roof. I don't have to keep sending them down different menu forks and things.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you're saying like that you can spy on them since you've created the groups or the channels within the team. You can just hop and you can see all of them because you created them. You can hop, you can just press it and you'll be brought into that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, as the organizer, you can sort of see all. And like I said, with you see with the locks, like, some of that stuff is going to be the individual students. Only students who have permissions to see that are going to be able to see it. Which also means that, like, for the students, they're not overwhelmed by like the menu because they're only going to see what pertains to them indirectly. So in theory, I could split them into like subgroups. I could have all sorts of, things, and I can manage it all very easily. But same thing with Blackboard too. Certain things will be hidden from students too. But I've just found Team maybe a little more intuitive. And like I said, I think it particularly works well for when students are trying to just work directly with one another. Which is also a reason why I'm not talking about Yammer here, but I like Yammer too for that, because it's very public in that way. Yeah.
And we're going to pause there just because we want to make sure that Sarah has enough time as well. So thank you, Andrew, for your time. If we have some time at the end, we can continue this conversation. So at this time, we'd like to turn the stage over to Sarah. So Sarah, thank you very much. And the stage is yours.
Thank you. My retired neighbor just decided that it is time to mow midday on a Wednesday, so that must be nice. So if you hear some background noise, I am very sorry about that. So thank God the grass stops growing soon, right? So I thank you so much, Chilton, for inviting me. I'm really, really happy to be here, and Ed, and for all of the great ideas we've gotten already. I've made a lot of sticky notes, so thank you. I'm here today to share how I keep students accountable for their own contributions, their individual contributions to group work. So this came up a couple of times when talking about group presentations, and I think it's pretty common that we know when students hear group work, there's going to be some students that are like, yeah, free ride, and others that are like, oh, great, here we go again. I'm going to do everything. So here's a couple of documents that I use. So first off, I'm really going to just gloss over the details of my project. Similarly to Julie's, it's scaffolded throughout the semester. Students are learning skills to complete their project as they go. For this particular, and I use these documents that I'm about to show you in multiple classes for multiple group projects. So I run 2 different classes that have a major group project throughout the semester. One is applied learning and the other is a little bit more, the other is a simulation. So I use these documents for both, which helps me stay a little less confused. So the first one that I'm going to share with you is, I'm dropping it into the chat now. It's called my project log. Oh, and I'm opening it. That's not what I want to do. So the project log is in there, so you can feel free to use that. And now I can open it. So, because you can't share an open file, as some of you probably know. All right, pause. Here we go. So this is the project log. It's 2 pages. Sometimes I will give them a hard copy if I'm in class, but now that we're online, I added these text boxes. So the directions, can everybody see that okay? Let me zoom in a little more. I guess I should check the chat.
No, so we can see, yeah, if you could zoom in just a little bit more, it'd probably make it a little easier, Sarah.
Yeah, of course. There we go. Is that better?
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, great. So the directions just explain why I'm getting them to use this log. So we're practicing long-term project management. Every teammate is accountable. That's important language because what you will find is that students task off the project log to like one student, and then when that student doesn't follow through, none of the other students feel they're responsible for that 0. But it is a 1-point project log, 1 point. So that's why I don't negotiate anymore. There are 400 points in my class. I'm not fighting about this one. They need to meet 3 requirements: respond to each question, assign a SMART task, which I'll explain in a minute, and submit it on time to Blackboard. So here they'll give a little summary of what they did. Here I want to know who's absent. I also want to know who deserves a little special recognition that week. I am going to be using achievement badges on Blackboard quite a bit, and so I would love to send an achievement badge to any noted students. What questions does your team have for the professor? So I'll be meeting regularly with these teams all semester, similarly to Julie, but questions are still going to come up, and I've found that that this is a great place to collect those. And when they submit these via email, I respond within about 24 hours or 48 hours or so. So they get the answers to the questions, and then we all have a print record of that. And then what project-related challenges did you encounter? So some examples: team didn't know where to look for information. The work was unfairly divided. Some students weren't there or produced low quality work. They weren't responding, that kind of thing. They're being disrespectful, they're being a bully, all of that. So I can collect and monitor that type of behavior throughout the semester. So here's the most important part. A SMART task means that an action is specific, so it's really clear what they need to do. It's measurable, so they'll know exactly when that task is complete. It's achievable, meaning like, yeah, we could do that in that time frame. That particular student, it's possible for that person. It's relevant, so it's an important step towards their goal. And then it needs to have a date and time. This is the one that students somehow don't know what a date and time is as soon as they encounter this form. So I provided some examples new this year. So this is an example of a SMART task that should always be on here. Jane, submit project log before this deadline. Another example, complete a rough draft so that we can get feedback before our next meeting. And then an example that is not SMART is someone work on the sourcing slide before our next meeting. And when I introduce this, I'll explain, like, what does work on mean? Does that mean you open a slide and put a logo on it? Like, because that's work on. So they need to be very specific. And then I added some common errors. Particularly, they tend to assign themselves a deadline right before a project is due and then flip out when people haven't done it. So that is document number 1 that I use. Yes, Janet, the students can type into that form when it's available to them, and they submit that form via Blackboard using the assignment function. So they have 4 deadlines throughout the semester that they will need to meet. I'm sharing another document with you now that is called the Self and Peer Evaluation document. This document I developed myself over running group projects probably 7 years or so. I used to teach other places before here. So let me share that with you. There you go. And so this is the self and peer evaluation form. Wait. Yes, okay, good. This is the new one. Perfect.
And Sarah, we don't see it on the screen right now. So you're not sharing your screen right now. I think you just shared that one document. So just so you know.
Rookie. Here we go. There we are. Thank you, Chilton.
So
this is their self and peer evaluation form. So this gets submitted every time they have a deadline, and I don't give them their grade and feedback until the form is submitted by all the teammates, which usually only takes like a day. So it's not like they're still getting their grades back usually within about 48 hours of this assignment being completed. So step 1, they're going to give everybody a score from 1 to 4. So this is where I catch if students aren't showing up. This is where I find out if they're distracting or staying off topic. This is where I find out if they've completed their tasks. This is where I find out if the tasks were completed in high quality and if they had a good attitude. So students evaluate themselves first, and you'd be surprised at how humble my students are. A lot of the time I end up bumping up their grade based on what their teammates said. And then they'll evaluate all of their team members as well. They add up the score to give everybody a score out of 20. And then if your team completed 100% of the work, how much of that 100% did each teammate contribute? Now, students have a hard time remembering that this should add up to 100. So I added some new language this year. We'll see how it goes. But you can usually get a really good picture between all of this stuff of what's going on in the team and how effectively did your group explain. So this provides a more anonymous opportunity, especially for those students that are inclined to come to your office and complain about their teammates. This gives them a place, and I've actually been like, you know what, I would love to take your meeting right now. They fill in this form and then let's talk. And so then usually they don't want to talk anymore because they did the form. So that's also very helpful. Oh, I forgot to tell one thing about the project log that I'm just going to loop back on here as I attach another document into the chat is that I will look them right in the face when we're face to face, or when we're in a meeting and I'll say, hey, Jane, you were supposed to do this particular task before that date. Did you do that? And Jane will say yes. And then I'll look at the other teammates and I'll say, do you all agree? And the first time I do that, it is terror, but they all know they're accountable after that. So here's the last document that I'm going to share with you today related to the group project. There are other documents, but I really wanted to zoom in on these ones because they're about individual accountability. So here's the other one that is opening right now. Come on. Can you see that? No.
No, it's not shared yet.
Okay. Teams has not been working very well for me today. Maybe I can just open it inside here and then share from there. Look at me with the workaround. And I'll share it from Mozilla. Okay, it should be opening. You guys can see me now. So this is the personal presentation and teamwork. This one's completed at the end of the semester. It's out of 20 points. So this is yet another way that the students all earn different grades. So with the self and peer evaluations, I tally them up all semester and keep an eye on progress. And then at the end, they do get a score out of 20, but of course I get final say on that. And I often, will bump it up a little bit compared to their peers if I feel they're deserving or, whatever. So personal presentation, this is where I evaluate their own professionalism during the presentations, specifically like their public speaking skills. This class fills the oral presentation requirement, and so there are multiple presentations. So this covers their professionalism and then their contribution to the group. So, they were obviously knowledgeable because there's always those students that clearly didn't get the same memo as the other ones. So this helps with that. And then the presentation. So they didn't read their notes. They didn't, they made eye contact more than 80% of the time. They spoke confidently and energetically, those kinds of things. And then here, this is one of my favorite parts of all my rubrics. I include some common comments so students know what to avoid, and so that I don't have to keep typing in all of the comments every time or writing them down. I can just make check marks here and deduct points rather than taking them here. So I could give somebody a perfect score, but then take away a couple points for something here. Or if it was particularly egregious, I can kind of do it in both places, and it makes sense. So that is the 3 documents that I wanted to share with you today about how I manage my individual accountability in groups.
And Sarah, one question: you use this in your you've used this in your face-to-face classes in the past, and they filled it out and just handed it to you in person, correct?
Yeah, I've actually done it in both. So even when I did it face-to-face, I still had them submit the project logs online because it's easier for me to grade them there because I can assign the entire team 1 grade, like that 1 point real quick. And then it's also easy for me to just jump right over onto my other screen and type up the responses to their questions or their log, or tell them like, hey, rethink that SMART date, or whatever it is. I'm concerned that your SMART tasks aren't specific enough. I can give them that kind of feedback right in the moment. So I've always collected those online. However, the self and peer evaluations, I used to get them to do in person because they always forgot. Always, unless I made them do it in class. But now I have a new system, so we'll see how it goes in the fall. In the spring, I did have to move it online, and yeah, I had to chase a lot of students down for self and peer evaluations, and it was really frustrating. So
So just out of curiosity, in the past or in the present, were you using Blackboard, like the assignment tool in Blackboard, to have them turn it in through that? Is that what you've been using?
Yep. And the way I got their presentations, because the assignments that they do as a group are all presentations, I get them to record their presentation using whatever they want. I teach them Screencast-O-Matic, but they can use whatever. And then they submit that link to me. Don't worry, I'm not filling up the Blackboard, but they saving that bandwidth and RAM or whatever the heck it's called. But they submit a link to me and I watch the video and evaluate from there.
Perfect. Thanks. Any questions for Sarah?
Oh, can I add one thing too that might have some questions?
Yes.
My group projects have a firing and quitting clause. So that's, that puts a little bit more accountability on each individual as well. I have had the same student fired from 2 teams in 2 different classes. Maybe it's you, but otherwise it's been, no one's chosen to exercise that, but it does give the students that really want to vent that they're having a problem. It gives them a mechanism to have some agency and some choice. And so then at the end of the semester, I can also say, you chose not to fire that teammate, so this is where we are.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Sarah.
What kind of equipment are you using? Are you using a mic or are you just using computer mic?
And you're talking about right now, Michael, right? Like at this moment, what are you using for your presentation?
Well, yeah, right now, because I think it's obviously you have a window open, but I'm talking to Sarah. Your face is in the center of the screen. It's very bright. Your voice was very clear. It was great.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, because I was literally just thinking I need to buy a noise canceling mic. Please, retired neighbors, stop enjoying your life. But
we could not hear them. We could not hear the lawnmower in the background. It sounded great here.
Excellent.
So,
excellent.
Are you using the internal webcam on your computer, or are you having
just everything on my computer? Yep.
Yeah, so it's the laptop. I'm assuming laptop, but it's the laptop microphone and laptop webcam, correct?
Yeah, I just have a SUNY Oneonta Dell standard issue computer.
Perfect. All right, well, we're at time, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Let me say thank you to Julie and Andrew and Sarah for taking the time to present today. As I said, it is always a little nerve-wracking to show people your classes. I always feel like I'm like opening my brain a little bit when I do that, and so I appreciate you being willing to share some of the things that you do in your class. Hopefully for others, you got some good ideas from them. We want to be able to have some times to let people share what they're doing, so you can hear from your peers how they're thinking about doing similar things. So I'm happy to stick around for a little bit if anybody does have additional questions, but we want to be respectful of your time and say thank you very much to all of you. So hope you have a great middle of the week. Good luck with the last dash to the beginning of the semester. We will be posting this to our blog space, which we will, we'll put the link up in the chat just so you have that. You can always come back and get to any of our webinars after the fact from our blog space. It takes us, I say 24 hours. We usually get up before 24 hours, but that just gives us a little wiggle room. But it takes about 24 hours for the videos to get posted after the webinar is done. But we wanted to have one place we could go back and find all this information again if you wanted to. So we'll be posting that to our site, and you may go back and look at it again whenever you like. So with that said, thank you very much. Enjoy the day. Good luck with everything. And we always look forward to hearing how it's going and how we can support. So thank you.